Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, I'm Susan, and I'm a college counselor and have read applications for a small liberal arts college and 2 research universities. My twins are recent college graduates.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of 2 daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a graduate of the University of Georgia, and she is getting her master's degree at North Carolina State University. Good morning, friends. After 4 days in Canada and then back for a day and 7 days in the great state of Colorado, back for 2 days, I am coming to you today from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where my niece will be married tomorrow, my brother's daughter. And of course, I have to tag on a bunch of college visits. I'm actually staying here for a week, half the time in Minnesota and the other half in Wisconsin, so that I can get a bunch of college visits in, things that were really hard to do during the pandemic. But you'll be hearing a lot more about my college visits over the next couple months. For now, our announcements. On June 23rd, 1972, President Richard Nixon signed the Education Amendments Act, better known as Title IX, which recognized gender equity into education as a civil right which altered women's sports forever. And why am I reading that now? Because it's the 50th anniversary. That was June 23rd, 50th anniversary of Title IX. Another big announcement. We did it in the news on how Michael Thaddeus, the math professor at Columbia, blew the whistle on how Columbia had been less than ethical and forthright in presenting information to U.S. News, and they had climbed from 18th all the way up to 2nd over the last couple decades with their presentation of data. Well, guess what? U.S. News has completely stripped Columbia, put them in the penalty box. They are no longer not only number 2, they are not listed at all. Another big news, the continual trend of politicians reaching into the realm of higher ed in a heavy-handed way. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin is being very actively involved in the search for a new state community college leader. It has a number of policymakers and higher ed advocates very agitated. They haven't seen this level of heavy-handedness in trying to play a role in who is going to oversee the school system. Another announcement, Bowdoin College has gone need blind for international students. As we've talked about before, need blind means you do not look at ability to pay when you make admissions decisions. It differs from what's often called need aware, need sensitive, or need conscious admissions, which means you do look at ability to pay. It's very rare for a school to do this for international students. The only schools currently doing it are Amherst College, Dartmouth College, Harvard University, Princeton University, Yale, and MIT. So they join a very selective list. Now, I will say this, very few schools can be truly need blind without taking into consideration where they recruit and where they travel and who they target. So part of this is commendable, but some of this also can be marketing. People like to be on these kinds of lists. Not saying that they're not being need blind. I'm just saying there's some caveats in there. And as one of our interviewers, Peter Van Buskirk, said, there's no such thing as being half pregnant. You're either need blind or you're not. If you're not need blind for transfers, if you're not need blind for your wait list, if you're not need blind for every kid, then don't tell me you're need blind. And I think that's something we need to always be aware of anytime somebody claims to be need blind. But it's still a pretty major announcement and worth our attention and worth mentioning. in more announcements, I get very excited about educational philanthropy. It's something I'm really passionate about. Someday I hope to be able to give some significant amounts of money to some educational causes I believe in. Um, and so I like to announce them. So Dartmouth College Tuck School of Business announced on Thursday the largest gift in school history, $52.1 million, and it is anonymous. It will go toward the endowment, and it will go toward a reoccurring summit that is going to convene global leaders from private and public sectors, academic researchers, and students. And the goal of this summit is to inspire action to improve the health, wealth, and sustainability of people and the planet. So that pretty big announcement and a pretty generous gift. And I always have to respect people who do it anonymously because they're clearly not doing it for praise and approbation. In fact, they don't want that. Nothing's wrong with disclosing who you are as a donor either, but certainly you have to commend the motives of someone who does it anonymously. Okay, very excited about this interview. It is with Angela McIver, Dr. Angela McIver, and she talks about an amazing program she started called Trapezium Math. So first, Angela gives her background as a former math teacher, and she lets us know how the genesis of Trapezium even came to be and how it emerged out of a successful math science upward bound program that began at Temple University. She talks about why she went on to get her PhD some 17 years ago now, with her commitment that she had to be able to help kids understand math. And she goes into detail about her journey there. And several interesting stints along the way. She was a professor at the Ivy League University, the University of Pennsylvania, once again, honing her ability to teach math. And she knew Trapezium was a hit when it launched, and the wait list was 1.5 years long for people to get in. She talks about the secret sauce. She also talks about the transition of the program from in-person to online. She talks about the best age to get started. She talks about how they can accommodate students with different learning differences. She talks about the cost, which is really reasonable for what she's offering. And she answers the question, how do you know that Trapezium works? And I will tell you this as an aside. When Lisa found out about Trapezium, she immediately said, oh, this would be perfect for my son, Thomas. And Lisa is singing Trapezium's praises. She's very pleased with the progress she's seen in her own son, Thomas, who's been using the program. So I think you're going to really like this interview with Angela McIver. It's a one-parter. Listen and enjoy. Friends, I'm very excited today. I'm here with Dr. Angela McIver, the founder of Trapezium Math. Welcome to the Your College Bound Kid podcast, Angela.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm in a second we'll get into what Trapezium Math is, but I'll just say I've been looking for something like this, a math program that uses some creativity to help people at a young age learn math and make math fun. And if our listeners think that name, Dr. Angela McIver, sounds familiar, I'm talking to a celebrity who's been on Good Morning America. You might have seen her on there, everybody. But before we get into it more, Angela, why don't you just give us your backstory?
Sure. Thank you. So I am a former middle school math teacher, and I left teaching math to run a program for students in Philadelphia high schools called the Math Science Upward Bound program. And it was run out of Temple University, and our focus was low-income, first-generation high school students, getting them into college. Our charge was not only to get them into college, but to get them into college in math and science fields. So we were extremely successful getting our kids into college. We were named a national model program. So out of over 200 upward bound programs in the country, they chose 4 because of our retention and college matriculation rates. But where we utterly failed was to get them to stick with their math and science majors. And because we were located on a university campus, I started just auditing the classes that kids take their first year in college in these math and science fields. So I was what would be called a participant observer. I took the classes, I did study groups with kids, and I was really just observing what was happening and to get information on how we could better prepare our students. But what I discovered was that students drop out of these classes not because of what they failed to learn in high school, but
Mm-hmm.
because of what they failed to learn in elementary school. And they just lack this foundation to move forward in these areas, and they can kind of fake it. I started looking at high school math programs and realized that kids can kind of fake it through these programs without a deep and flexible understanding of the math, and it doesn't hit them until they get to college. And that's many people's experiences, and it was our students' experiences. But the problem was so compelling that I decided to quit my job and go back to school and study this, and got my PhD in 2005. And my dissertation looked at 40 kids in middle school, 20 students who were at the end of their sixth grade year and 20 students at the end of their eighth grade year. And I gave every student this, probably took about an hour and a half long interview of just math questions that started off really easy and just got progressively harder. And I would videotape them and just say, tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you're thinking. And just listening to students talk about their understanding or their misunderstanding of math fundamentally changed the way I think about how we teach children. And when I left school, decided to start my first business called Math Foundations, which worked with middle schools and high schools to train teachers on, this is what you do when you get kids who don't understand math. This is why they're not understanding. This is what's going on, and going from there. What got me to Trapezium Math was that during this time, when I had my first small business, I had started creating this very comprehensive list of discrete math skills that you would expect a child would know by the time they left fifth grade. And if I were to print that out, it was like 10 pages long. And it could be anything from how to tell time on an analog clock to how to use our base 10 number system, or, measurements and algorithms, basic fact practice, what have you. And I took that list and I said, okay, if this is where kids need to be by the end of fifth grade, then where do they need to be by the end of kindergarten, first grade, second, third? And once I had that, I looked at my own children's elementary math curriculum. I had a child at the time in first grade and one in third grade. And they, just to say, they were in the top elementary school in our city. It's a school where parents would camp out to get a spot in the kindergarten class. My husband and I camped out for over 24 hours in January to make sure we would get a spot for our daughter.
So you were one of those ones that camped out.
We're one of the ones that camped out. Absolutely. So, this elementary school is one that is, touts very high test scores. And yet I looked at their elementary math curriculum and I said, there is no way these children will be prepared for the most rigorous math courses in middle school and beyond if we just follow this path. And I told my husband, it's not going to happen. We need to do something. So I went to the principal of our school and shared my 10-page, spreadsheet, and, the cross-referenced it with the curriculum and said, this is not going to work. We need to do something, and was rebuffed. And actually, it became over the years a very, I don't want to say adversarial, but it was, there was some
contentious.
Yes, it was very contentious because I would come to, PTA meetings and say, we need to fix the math program. And I would be trying to get parents and organized to fix the math program. But then what I decided was to start my own out of my house. And I started one when my daughter was in third grade, my son was in first grade, for them and some of their friends, and talked to the parents and said, do you want, we're doing a math club. At the time, I was teaching a class, a graduate class at the University of Pennsylvania, so I hired a graduate student to help me create the class, and that started out of our home in 2009. And by 2014, we had a waiting list that was a year and a half long. We had expanded to do all grades. When my youngest started kindergarten, she came to me with a piece of paper that had all these names on it. And I said, "What is that?" And she said, "That's my math club." So we had to start a kindergarten math club. But by 2014, we had math clubs for every grade coming to my house after school, and a waiting list that was a year and a half long. And I thought, wait, we have something here. And that's when I looked for a brick and mortar location, and we opened Trapezium Math. We were initially called Monster Math Club, but we could not get that name, so we had to find a name that we could register. And so we started Trapezium Math Club in our brick and mortar in 2014, and that's how it started.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And Angela's from the great city of Philadelphia, which my oldest daughter was born in, and we lived in that area for 14 years. I can tell you that I know at least 3 students that have gone through her program that rave about it. And they also have very high math SAT scores too.
Yes.
So I know you're getting results over there.
Yeah, it took many years, but we're realizing, at first you think, okay, when you get your PhD, everything you have to prove, right? You can't just get out there and say something. So I didn't. It took a long time of getting data and watching kids go through our program to see that, yes, we can change kids' math trajectory. And so that's what we were very excited about, is our initial kids who started in first grade and went through middle school were getting phenomenal SAT scores. Yeah.
That gets parents' attention, especially when you're on a
Yes.
College Bound Kid podcast. So talk to me about a couple things. One, what is the secret sauce that makes it work? And also, I know you have summer programs, after school programs,
Yes.
and online programs. I think the online program would be the one that would, resonate with most of our listeners who are all over the world. But
Yes.
so talk about both of those things. What's the secret sauce that makes it work? And go over those different options that you provide.
Sure. So if you think about the math learning space that's out there, and there's many, I'm not going to name the programs, but they basically are very worksheet textbook driven, right? So if you want to sign your kids up for math enrichment, they are sent to a place that either they drill, you do a lot of math problems and you move on to the next level, or you sit with someone who you do a lot of math problems and move on to the next level, or you're put on a computer-based program that assesses where you are and feeds you problems based on where you are. But what is missing from all of those is this understanding or insight in how children learn, right? And also this working in a way to make kids love doing math, right? Love engaging, and not the kid who already loves math and you just can give them more. That's great. But our main focus, we call, is joyful confidence building math instruction. That we want kids to come to us and look forward to coming to us, and then build confidence in what they do. So when we were a brick and mortar store, if you came into our space, we had no tables and chairs. Everyone put their shoes in the cubbies and sat on the floors. Our walls were all whiteboard paint so that kids could write anywhere. And we believed in agency for kids. So give kids, the autonomy to pursue math at their just right math level. And when you do that, they tend to want to do harder and harder math. So we realized that when we kind of change the whole learning paradigm and focus on how children actually learn and what experiences you can give children to make learning joyful, you can get kids to go. There's no limit to how far you can get kids to go. So when we were in our brick and mortar space, our math clubs always had culminating events. So right before the pandemic, when we shut down, we were preparing for our play. Every year we put on a full-length math-based play, which is, they tend to be very funny, and kids do really incredible math tricks. We teach them math magic, that term, and we fold this into some sort of play. And as when we were right before the shutdown, we were putting on a play that had kids doing time travel, and we time traveled back to, you know, historical figures who were significant in math, who were, not represented. So a lot of women in math, a lot of people of color who contributed to the math canon, and kids learn that way, right? Our final activity in math club every year was what we called the Monster Mathathon, which was just like the Amazing Race, but with math. And we had kids from kindergarten to fifth grade, partnered with a partner and a parent chaperone who would go around Philadelphia, right? And they had to solve math problems before they could get their next clue. And kids came into math club wanting to prepare for that, wanting to learn the math that they knew they were going to need to use in the Monster Mathathon. So really changing the way we engage kids in math. And I wanted it to be more like children who become voracious readers. You introduce children to reading, and then you just let them go. They just want to read more. You buy them books and they just read them. And I wanted to figure out, how do we do that in math? You turn them on and they just want to do more math. And so that's the central focus of what we do, is getting kids to want to do math and making it joyful and confidence building.
Awesome. Talk to me particularly about the online options, because
Sure.
I know you have after school, and I know you have summer programming, but that does limit you to Philadelphia. But you're speaking to a national audience and international even here. So talk to me about because I know it's been more recent that you've been developing your materials.
Sure. So we actually don't have any in-person options anymore. We
Oh,
are
you got
a
rid of them.
casualty. We were a
The
casualty of the
pandemic?
pandemic. We had to close our brick and mortar store when it became clear we just couldn't, we couldn't keep it, and we had to close it.
Sure.
And then we had to figure out how to move online when we had been so decidedly technology free, right? We
Mhm.
were like, we wanted it to be hands-on, and it was really hard, but we figured out that we could recreate the joy and magic of math club in an online space. It looks very different. Children participate in clubs with three other kids. So there's 4 kids and a club leader. We send a kit. So our whole thing that we tell parents is the only technology the student needs is a Zoom link. Other than that, everything they use is from their kit. And we have created these highly engaging math that kids do in their clubs that I think very closely follows what we did when we were in person. And the thing that I'm most excited about is because we've moved it down to 4 kids in a club, we're really able to dig in and move kids more than we did when we were in person. It's a different dynamic, it's a different setup, and it is um, really wonderful and exciting. And if someone had told me I would be saying this, 3 years ago, that I would be creating this online math space, I would say, no, no technology. I'm
Look at
against
you.
it. And now I'm like, we've done it in a way that, that has maintained our ethos. Yeah.
That is awesome. So one of my big questions is age.
hmm
So are your groups mixed by age? Is it mobility groupings? What age do people start? What is, like, I would say the right age, but talk to me a little bit about like the different groups that you span as far as where people are at when it comes to whether you want to call it age or level.
Sure. So one of the biggest things that we have created through our Trapezium Math, and let me just say, when we were brick and mortar, we considered our Trapezium Math Club like our lab that we used to create content that we then sold to schools. So we have a number of schools and school districts that use Trapezium Math that came out of our math club, and we still do that to this day. So one of the biggest things that we created was differentiated math lessons, a single lesson that can be differentiated at 5 levels. So you can have kids at 5 different levels doing the same activity. And the thing that really made me really try to develop this for teachers and develop it for Math Club is that when you are an elementary teacher teaching reading, it is just assumed that you have children in your class that are reading at all different levels. And so you have books that are leveled, and kids read their books at their just right level. And nothing like that ever existed for math. And I thought, we need this for math. So what our math clubs allow us to do is have kids work beyond their grade level if they are precocious strong math students, or below their level without there being any issue, right? Kids, it's a non-issue. We have kids choose their level, and they are given a certain amount of time to do an activity or a lesson, and so that allows us to have larger groupings. That being said, our program spans kindergarten to 5th grade. We used to have a middle school math program, but the online program is K to 5, and kids are either in what we call Clubhouse Junior, and that's depending on what their math fluency is, or Clubhouse. And then within that, we have a lot of grade span. So we have K to 2, generally speaking, in our Clubhouse Junior, and grades 3 to 5 in our Clubhouse. But kids move fluidly throughout that. We spend a lot of time talking about students and regrouping them. We put together a group of 4 second grade girls last term, who are all over the country, but were all really, really bright. And we thought, okay, we want them all to be together so we could just push them ahead. So we contacted the parents and said, we think we have a really good club for your girls. And they all agreed. They agreed on a day that worked for them. And these girls are, one's in Michigan, one's in Maryland, one's in Massachusetts. They're all in the M states. One's in New York City.
There's
One's
a
in
lot
New
of
York
M's
City.
out there.
Right, a lot of
M's
M's. And one's in New York City. But that the beauty of our program is that we can move kids, into clubs that work for them. And the other beauty is that it's not one-on-one. So tutoring is really a child sitting in front of a tutor, and a tutor kind of sharing how to do a problem, and the student mimicking it back, right, or doing it back. And there's not a lot of engagement or conversation that happens. But when you have a group of kids, when you have 4 kids and a facilitator, there's a lot of conversation that can happen, a lot of strategy, a lot of work that can be done in that setting that I think pushes kids much further than one-on-one.
Now, what about a student that is either struggles in math or has learned different types of learning differences? Do you feel the system can accommodate that, or is there a type of
Absolutely.
student that it just doesn't work for?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. We have every level of student, and our whole thing is, and we have a lot of parents who say, oh, I'd like my kid in math club, but they don't really like math. And I'm like, that's the kid we want in math club. We also want the kid who loves math,
Sure.
right? And we have advanced groups. We have a group that we put together of kindergartners who are working on executive functioning, right? These kids are all struggling with focusing, and we do very short kind of activities that help them work on staying focused. And every level of kid we take and work on.
That is fantastic. So Angela, walk our listeners through what would be their next steps if they like what they hear and they are like, I want to learn more about this. This is fascinating to me. I'd love to. And I can tell you, my attention really got piqued, not only because I've worked with multiple students
that have had these really, really high test scores that have gone through Angela's program, but literally, and I can think of two instances where the student, in one case was a student, in another case it was the parent, they really attributed their child's strong math performance to going through your program. So it's not like it's just coincidental. So I know that's appealing to our listeners. So
Yes.
what would be the steps? Like where do they go on our
Absolutely.
website? Just walk somebody sort of from point A to point Z to signing up.
Sure, absolutely. I do want to add to that because I didn't kind of end up my story with my whole contentious,
Yeah, I was going to
fight
come
with
back to
my
that. Did they ever come
school.
around?
You know what happened was, and because you were just mentioning, I started this program when my son was in first grade. He's now a senior in high school. He did get a very high math SAT score, but when he graduated from this elementary school that was K-8, 8th grade, he and his friends who started in Trapezium were the only ones from the graduating class that tested into advanced math in high school.
Wow.
And 3 of those kids tested into the highest advanced class that they could get into, which put them on track for calculus for 2 years in high school. So that was like, it took me 8 years to prove my point.
But did they ever come around and acknowledge it, or are they still salty? That's the question.
That's the question. They're not using that same curriculum, thankfully. They're using a different curriculum.
Okay.
But that just, I was like, that felt good. So we have something called try before you buy for any parent, because we want to make the entry, it is a upfront cost of purchasing a kit, and then you purchase for a term. And we want parents to try us out and feel good about it. We will be having several try before you buy opportunities throughout the summer and early fall. Going into the school year that parents can sign up. The kids get to do a sample math club. We talk to the parents about what is involved, and then they can register. If you want to just directly register, you can do that as well. We also, to make it, an easy kind of entry for parents into math club, we tell parents to think about it like piano lessons. Right? You don't just do a term of piano lessons for your child and then they're, accomplished, right? You want that. This is something that we want parents to think about as a really necessary add-on. 60% of fourth graders in the country, regardless of a demographic, are not proficient in math. And then when you break that down by the number of girls and the number of students of color, that number just goes up. By high school, by 12th grade, almost 80% of students are not performing in math at a level that is considered proficient. And that is highly problematic. And it's across schools and districts and public schools, private schools. We don't do math great in this country. And so we want parents to see that we can help with that process. So we have try before you buy. You can sign up and have your kids try it out. And then we also have information sessions. You can find all of that information on our website, which is trapeziummath.com, like a trapezoid, trapezium math.com.
So I'm not sure to spell that for someone who's still not getting it.
Okay. Here it goes. TRAPEZ, like zebra, IUM math, math.com.
Thank you. And what kind of costs are involved? I mean, I understand people will try before you buy, but what
Sure.
would the investment would people be looking at?
So the classes, we do sessions that are, we do a fall session that's 12 weeks, a winter session that's 12 weeks, and a spring session that's 6 weeks. We also do a 4-week summer session. Each session is $47 per class, if you think about that. So you multiply it by however long your session is. And then we have a one-time kit purchase. The kit is $235. And, it has everything that the students would need across the grades from K to 5, because everything is differentiated. It's all in there. So there's a one-time kit fee, and then if you just think it's $47 per class, that falls along the lines of, we're right in the middle of all of the other math tutoring centers and programs.
And what is your source of confidence that it works? I mean, I know both of your kids did it, and I know both of your kids are really strong in math.
Right. All three of my kids
Oh
do.
yeah,
All three of my kids are
I
very
forgot about
strong
your
in math,
ninth grader.
right?
Your ninth
Yeah,
grader too.
yeah.
I was
So,
thinking about your two older
uh,
ones.
you
Yeah,
know,
go ahead.
I can say anecdotally, and we've had this,
Sure.
we've had a lot of parents who said this is the reason my kids made it to the honors math. But we also have some data from a school that we work with in Trenton. So there's one school in Trenton. It's an independent school that serves students from low income households, but they go to a private school. So it's kind of like the Milton Hershey School, and they do Trapezium Math K to 4, and we give them 3 times a year standardized tests that are used, across in many states to see where they are. So this is a group of kids who typically don't score well, but 90% of students who are in this school and using our program are above grade level in math. We have several who are testing 3 and 4 grade levels above in math, but 90% of kids are done, perform above grade level in math. So we are collecting data now on how our students perform, and that is one of them. My kids who went through it, they regularly got perfect scores. Our kids go to public school, so they regularly were getting perfect scores on their math tests. And we have great confidence in our ability to help kids perform.
And how many students total would you say have gone through, counting your previous iterations, your
Oh
program?
gosh, I would say more than 2,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you count, yeah, our online class when we were in person, when we were running out of my house. Here's another. Let me just share this other data point. When my daughter was in third grade, she's the one I started math club for. She's the reason I started math club, was for my daughter and my son. Their first math club was 4 girls, and they stayed. The 3 of the 4 girls stayed in math club through middle school. All 3 of those girls, including my daughter, are pursuing STEM related majors in college. So my daughter is pursuing data science. Her other friend is a double major in math and economics. And the third is pursuing a physics major at Harvard. So we just know that the experience children get in elementary school really does make a difference and builds the foundation for success and confidence moving on, particularly for girls, particularly for students of color. Like, we want them to recognize that they can do hard math and they belong there. They belong in these classes.
Now I feel like I need to challenge you to do something that people have challenged me to do. You have to start your nonprofit, because someone like Gates Millennial, there's a lot of people that I think would give like 7-figure gifts to there's a lot of people out there that are very concerned about people achieving in the
Absolutely.
space where you have, but you need that 501c3 status to get all the money. I found that out the hard way myself.
Yes, and believe me, we as a small business, we've started down that path, and then we stopped. But let me just tell you where we feel like we can have an impact in that space, and that is with the American Recovery Program monies that goes to schools to provide
Mhm.
enrichment to address the pandemic. If there are any schools out there, we have contracted with several school districts to provide math club for children in those districts using the American Recovery Program funds. And we do the online math club, and the school district pays for it, and the kids get to do it from their home, and the parents get to pick the time. But I agree with you. It is really critical that we get programs like these in front of kids who really don't have the access to the resources to do them. So, between now and 2024, schools can use their funding to provide math club for their children, for their students in their districts.
Awesome. Well, let's wind down, Angela. No guest gets away without getting off the hot seat. So you're
Okay,
ready?
I'm ready.
All right. You can't be the founder of Trapezium. You can't be a math teacher. You can't even be in education. What else is Angela going to do with her life?
What else have I can tell you what I'm doing with my life. My niece moved to Mexico City just on a whim. And so we have all of the brothers and sisters, all her aunts and uncles, her mother. We decided we're going to go visit her, and it's going to this summer. And I have started Duolingo because I was like, I don't
Sure.
speak Spanish, and I am going there. And I said I need to at least be able to speak like a first grader. So I do Duolingo every single day. I'm on a streak. I am really excited about learning Spanish. So that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. What is your favorite kind of music?
Oh, let me just tell you, I am not the person to ask that question. My husband knows every jazz album, everything. He's a music audiophile. He knows everything. And when he met me, I was the kind of person who would buy those like solid gold 90s CD collection.
Right.
Yeah, that's me. You put together the top 40 list and put it in a playlist. I'm on it. So I am the worst person to ask about music, except I love 70s R&B, especially Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind & Fire, and Al Green.
That is good stuff.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Dream vacation.
Dream vacation involves water. Being near water, in water, on the way, a lake or the ocean. That is my dream.
What location? What country?
Okay, so I have two kinds of vacations that I love. It's the vacations like where you go to a city and you explore, like we're going to Mexico City. I'm looking forward to that. My dream, just relax to get away, is Martha's Vineyard.
I knew you were going to say that. Because you reached out to me once and said, I'm going to have a place here at Martha's Vineyard.
Yes, that is where I am retiring for my summers, for sure.
So someone comes to Philadelphia. What restaurant do you recommend they go to?
Booker's on Baltimore Avenue.
And what do they get? What do they order?
So you're going kind of deep into West Philly. It is a Black-owned restaurant that is phenomenal, and it's soul fusion, soul food, Southern comfort with a twist. It's amazing. Yes.
Awesome. You can meet anyone alive or dead for an hour to spend an hour with. Who are you going to pick?
Someone alive or dead that I could meet. Okay. I will say this person is still alive and I want to meet them because I want to say, listen, I can bring up those math scores, and that's
Let
LeBron
me guess.
James.
Oprah?
No, LeBron James.
Okay.
His Promise Academy.
Fan, or is it his academy?
His academy.
Yep.
In Akron, Ohio, and I'm following what they do. I love what they do, and I'm like, we can blow those test scores out of the water. So that's who I'd like to meet. And I am a fan. I'm a fan of his barbershop, HBO shows, and basketball. Yes, but really for the math at his school.
Awesome. What's a book that you've read that's impacted your life?
Oh my gosh.
I told you this is the hardest part. You can talk Trapezium all day. You can do that in your sleep. It's not called the hot seat for a reason.
The one that I was like, I have many books that have impacted my life, but the one that I'm going back to pick up to read, like it's next after I finish the book that I'm reading now, is with the Ukrainian crisis. And it's about these young people who were fleeing Lithuania in World War II. It's an amazing book. And it kind of is revisiting the same kind of flight path that many Ukrainians are taking now. And I was like, I'm going to get that book and read it again. So, I mean, there's a lot of books, but that's what comes first to my mind.
That's what I wanted. First to the mind. All right. Last question. What's your advice for parents out there that are listening?
So I am a parent who is kind of at the end, right? I have a daughter in college, one who's going to college, and one who's in high school. And I don't know if this is pandemic related or just like wisdom with age, that I have let a lot of stuff go. Like it's not that it's not, I was intense about my children and their academics and their grades and their sports and their this, and I have let so much of it go, and I think it's healthy for everyone involved. And I know that that's that's the advice I would give.
That's good advice. Now, did you
Yeah.
come to that knowledge post-pandemic or pre-pandemic?
It was post-pandemic, or it was during the pandemic and realizing what the pandemic was doing to my children. It was post-pandemic when my kids were applying to colleges and I had to, things just were put into a different perspective, right? For us and for me. And I think it's really been helpful in our family and our family dynamic and our children's mental health. Like, step back a little bit.
Probably
And
your mental health too.
my mental health too. My husband's not quite there. My son, he's like, he's still getting a C in Spanish, and I was like, whatever. He's gonna be fine.
There you go. I love it. Listen, one last time, Angela, give us the website again.
Sure. It is trapeziummath.com, all one word, and trapezium is spelled TRAP like Paul, EZ like zebra, IUM. Trapeziummath.com.
Thank you so much. This has been
you.
a blessing and an honor. We've been talking about doing this for a half a year.
For a long time, yeah.
We finally did it, so I'm excited. Awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Friends, right after our interview was over, Angela and I realized she never shared the book name. So she reached back out to me and said the following. The name of the book is Salt to the Sea by Ruta. Now I'm going to botch this up, so I'm actually going to spell it Sepetys. I'm going to read it again. She said, as soon as I finish the book I'm working on right now, because it is so good. Next week in the news. First of all, let me say this. We're moving to what will most of the time be a 3-part and not a 4-part format in our Thursday episode. It's not a major change. In fact, it's really no change at all. Let me explain it. So you know that when we have a college spotlight and it is also the interviewer, then we don't have a college spotlight that we do on our own. Well, pretty much our interviews for the next few months are going to be college spotlights. Shared before interviewing these 27 senior admission leaders in the summer and fall. And so that's building up quite a catalog for us of interviews that are all college spotlights. So what you can expect starting today is a 3-part format. You've seen in the past, but it's been a mix. It's been a hodgepodge. Sometimes we have the admissions interviewers that college spotlight. Sometimes we do our own spotlight. Well, we have such a nice catalog of interviews banked right now that we'll just run them because we don't want to run them like 4 months late. We want to keep them fairly current. So in the news, we will be discussing elite transfer admissions from community college to the University of Virginia. Article by Nick Anderson of the Washington Post, and this will be with Vince. Our question from a listener asked the question, if a student is interested in the fine arts, is it better off attending an art and design school or a general college or university that offers a strong arts program? That, of course, will be with Lisa. And our college spotlight / interview will continue with Sue Corner. And I hope you've been enjoying Sue. I think her last segment, part 2 of Myths about private schools, was must see TV, but it's not TV. Must listen to podcast material. Let's put it that way, where she went into the myth about selectivity doesn't determine quality and how easy it is to manipulate rankings and admit rates. Well, we transition now, and over the next 2 weeks, we're going to do a really deep dive into Willamette University, a pretty special school that the student going to this year and multiple students looking at in the up-and-coming class. We go really in depth, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. So listen and enjoy. Friends, you know I can't stop a podcast now without saying something that's really dear to my heart. And I just want you to think, as you think about the schools you're considering, are you trying to decide on a school primarily because of prestige to impress people? Or are you primarily trying to place that is a fit and a match for who you are? Because that's what we're all about. Because college is not a prize to be won. It is a match to be made. Doesn't mean you have to ignore prestige, but it's the icing. It's not the cake. The cake should be fit and match. See you next week, everybody.
And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 14. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel, and to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joy Stucker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stalianos Dimitru. If you want to have a coaching session with Lisa or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcast. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Thursday.